Video 16, Immigration. And welcome back. This is video 16 on immigration, and this is a very important issue. And if some working man on a single income has a family at home and he gets paid on a Friday evening €600 and he goes on a round of the town like Goodnight Irene, he has a great time while he's spending it, and he'll be a great fella in the pub and he'll buy a drink for everybody. But come the next morning when there's a few pound needed, or maybe towards the end of next week, it's gone. And there are people who cannot understand and cannot see that you can sometimes have a great time when you're accumulating a huge problem down the road for yourself or somebody else, and it looks great. You're really putting off the evil day. But responsible people don't do that. They try to manage their country, and we see a complete lack of management in most areas. So we'll just deal with the situation with immigration. And as a farmer, I produce cattle, and there's no doubt that immigrants help process those cattle. Whether Irish people would do it if we didn't have immigrants, I do not know. I know that they did it at one time and they had no problem with it. Whether they're out of work because of that, I don't really know. But it's important just to understand the history. Prior to the EU, we in Ireland only allowed Irish people come into our country and people from the UK, from Britain. And that's because of the common travel area between Britain and Ireland that goes back hundreds of years, and no one's suggesting anything different. So essentially, if you could get yourself into the UK and get processed and get a British passport, you could come into Ireland, and vice versa. And that's because we adopted very responsible immigration policies. So then, right up until about 2005, roughly that time, EU citizens could come here from certain countries. They could come here from France. That was extended sometime around 1995 or there. But they could come here from certain countries. But they couldn't come from the new countries, the new previously communist countries in the east or southeast of Europe. So that was opened up about in the early part of the noughties, as they call them, the early 2000s, the early part of the 21st century. But separate to that, we voted actually to allow these people in. That was in all the treaties, so we can't take issue with that. We agreed to this common travel area. But then there's another concept called asylum. And this is people fleeing from persecution and terror. And so the world has kind of decided that when you arrive in a place under persecution, you're entitled to claim asylum and have it processed. But you can straight away see that it's wide open to abuse. You can have economic asylum seekers who come here for all the benefits that we have here. So in recent years, we have another situation which I mentioned at the start of my channel. We can have another situation, and that is where the likes of Angela Merkel decides we can invite the half of Africa and the half of Asia over and pack them in anywhere we like. And there's a huge battle between the left-wingers in this country and the rest of us over this. Essentially, at the moment, whatever the European Union, which is actually Macron and Merkel, want, happens. And many people feel, and I agree, that the EU effectively invited all these people in. They more or less told them, come ahead. They had no contingency plan. And as a result, naturally, people from Asia and Africa will arrive where there are better conditions. Now, in 1981, the census showed 3.4 million Irish people living here, with 191,000 from abroad. Now, you might want to see that again. There were 3.4 million Irish people here, and there were 191 from who were born otherwise than in Ireland or the UK. So we had very few of them living here. In 2016, the figure now, the population had gone up to 4.6 million, and 753,000, right? That's almost identical, 750,000 were born outside Ireland or the UK. Now we can see that this is a massive change. I mean, there was a time in my life when the population of the Republic was only 3 million. And here we have in 750,000 from outside of Ireland or the UK. And the situation is even more made worse by allowing in people for whom we never voted to allow in. And allowing in people just any way they want to come. Get yourself into Europe and off you go, you'll be fixed up. And I think this is a disaster. It has disastrous consequences all over Europe and indeed in America. So essentially, while we're letting in all these people, we are sending home workers from outside the EU, such as Brazil, South America, other parts of South America, and other places, who have come in here legally, done their 3 years, worked as barmen and other occupations, including nurses and meat processors, and are forced to go home. So we don't have control on a significant part of our immigrants. And it's not that long ago since all non-Irish or UK citizens coming in here had a report to the Garda station, come in and have their papers processed, and been given the permits needed to stay and work here. And obviously you have to have that system. That's in every country. Now, the effect of the German EU policy is to bypass the legitimate way of coming in for a huge tract of the world. And Angela Merkel is the one I name, but it's going to go on even after her day. They do not have any policy to improve the living conditions in the countries where these people come from. They're lashing in foreign aid out there. And after all this foreign aid, we still have no end in sight to them coming here. The corruption and everything is as bad as ever in Africa. And is there any effort to rectify it? No. Instead, what we have is invite them all over here. And we can see that that's not sustainable in any country. So the whole idea of foreign aid is to help people thrive in their own country. Yes, not working. Then we have the situation where they want us to reduce our carbon footprint here. So how can you reduce your carbon footprint if you aim also to increase the population? On the 28th of November 2016, Deputy Eamon Ryan, the leader of the Irish Green Party and a member of the Irish Parliament, he's a TD, stated that he wanted 5 million migrants to enter Ireland. Now the population, as we've seen, is 4.6, I think, going by my earlier display. And he wants to double our population. And he put that on the record of Dáil Éireann, and it's there to be seen. It was argued with me that it's not there. I produced it and showed it. And not one of the 158 politicians in Dáil Éireann took issue with it. Not one. And this is the extent of this green impact. Now you can see yourself that all these people are displacing the native population, weakening our culture, damaging our culture. And there is a time cost to this, because while we do need a certain amount of labour, and indeed I am served meals by people from EU countries, and I'm sure there'll be nurses or somebody from abroad attending to me at some time. We can't keep our Irish nurses. We won't pay them. They have to go abroad while we bring in other nurses. But our Irish nurses are embedded in our society. These people are not embedded. And down the road we're going to have to find houses. There's already huge pressure on houses. So people like meat plants, which won't pay the farmer a decent price for his meat, are getting cheap labour from South America, displacing Irish labour. But once those workers get on in years or retire, the meat plant has no responsibility. The cost of keeping them for the rest of their lives lies on the taxpayer. And therefore it can be seen that the whole issue of immigration is complex, and that it needs to be looked at from the point of view of time cost. The cost over time. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but the European Union imposes trade restrictions on African agricultural produce. I'll bet you never seen a bar of chocolate grown and processed in Africa. When did you ever see a jar of coffee? Sorry, did I say chocolate? Yeah. Cocoa, I meant in the original one. When did you see cocoa processed in Africa? When did you see chocolate? We have Nestles, we have Cadbury's, and we have all these. Lind, and all these, mostly made in Belgium. Well, you never see them made in Africa. Now, what would be wrong with allowing a farmer in Africa grow his coffee and his cocoa and his tea, and processing it there in a co-op and exporting it to us? There's no reason why Africa can't produce every bit as good agricultural produce as other countries, and particularly when it has the climate that we don't have here. So they're imposing trade restrictions while giving foreign aid to African people, and they won't let them pick themselves up. And that, in my view, is grossly unfair. Never mentioned in the media. But one way or the other, my policy is simple. If we ever get our party, the first thing is to take control of immigration. Britain is now taking control with Brexit, and immigration was a factor in Brexit. Now, why can we not take control alongside with Britain? I know the EU may get in the way, but we have no obligation to the EU to take in the people who are not from the EU, because it's costing us dearly, and the Irish leadership of our country, they just want to roll over and let Angela Merkel and Macron scratch their bellies and be the best boy in the class. And the cost of this, and the cost to our children and grandchildren, it can't be calculated. I'm not against these people coming in, but we must control them. They must be checked out by the department and by the Gardaí, as they always were. And guards will tell you that when we had Pakistani doctors coming here and reporting to Garda stations, when we had meat workers coming here, they used to always say they couldn't understand how they were taken into the Garda station and treated with such kindness. In other countries you wait at a hole in the wall and you queue, and in Ireland you're given a time and you come in and you can sit down and relax with your children. So we are not savages. We treat people right. But on the other hand, we deserve to be treated right as well. We'll never ever get proper treatment from our own government, not from Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, Labour or Sinn Féin. As someone rightly said about Sinn Féin, they want the Brits out and everyone else in. They're losing votes big time. So all of this is all part of this globalist cultural Marxism, probably driven by the likes of George Soros, the like of Bono. I call him tax pro bono. The likes of Mary Robinus, I call her, Robinson, and many others. I go back to the central point. We have to start taking our own country into our own hands. and deciding what we do with it. We've got to work on that as quick as possible. I'm now at 15 minutes. So that's my first take on immigration. I may have some people may get very upset with it, but it's a very important issue. And so I'll see you back, and thank you very much.